Now we're live. Welcome everyone to the reboot of the Greater Purpose Health and Fitness podcast, previously known as Coffee and the Six F's. Our first guest is going to be Lucas Hudec. I said that right?
Yep.
Nailed it. Lucas was saying that there's about 8 different ways you can pronounce his last name. Mine's Chenard, so mine's about the same. Lucas has been a member of Greater Purpose Health and Fitness, also known as CrossFit Cameras, which is our CrossFit affiliate when did you start, Lucas?
It was in 2017, kind of late summer. So I think I started fundamentals end of July, and then hit classes kind of mid-August.
Fundamentals, and that's our gym's way of on-ramping people into our group class setting. Do you remember how many people were in your group?
Just me.
Just you. Oh, one-on-one.
Yeah, one-on-one. Yeah, no, there was, I think just after that is when you converted to the group format for fundamentals. I might have been one of the last ones that came in one-on-one, but it was Jaleesa who did it for me.
Jaleesa, who is my wife, taking it home. Then we went back to group and then back to individual fundamentals again. So all around the world.
Full circle and halfway around again.
Exactly. It's science. Lucas has a pretty amazing story that we're going to get right into today. I'm not going to talk much about it because I told you before we started about this. I was like, I'm going to let you talk more than me. So if you want to just kind of start us off on your story, Lucas, go for it.
Yeah, sounds good. This is a story that I guess started, and I'll kind of do it like a timeline in terms of what happened when I was growing up. So it all kind of happened when I was in grade 9. Was when the start of this story happened. I'll kind of go through those few years around what happened then, and then things kind of I went to university and hit the kind of regular part of my life where things were moving along. I was figuring out what I'm doing in the world and all that kind of stuff. And then, in about late 2016, it's kind of a moment, and something we'll get into, but that kind of changed things with how I understood myself and just how I felt about myself. And so that then took me into kind of a rediscovery. And so it, was a story that had kind of a gap really of when a lot of things didn't happen, things were happening, just not kind of very talked about or not something that I was paying close attention to. And then, so for about a year, things were really rocky. And then that kind of led into me being a member at Greater Purpose and kind of where we are today. So kind of just take you through that whole timeline of what happened when I had my breakdown and kind of what's taken place since then.
That sounds great. Yeah. So the idea of this podcast is not to only share knowledge and tips about health and fitness, but also stories, because we know stories are impactful. By us sharing our stories, we actually are helping others. So hopefully that's what Lucas's story can do for others as well.
Yep, definitely. So I called this story, and I initially did this as a member of the Human Library at Augustana, which is a great thing that the Augustana Library puts on, where people, share their story, talk about human connection, and really just benefiting more from listening to someone rather than, reading a book or, maybe talking to somebody that you don't know as well. This is another avenue. So I titled it Like Father, Like Son, Learning to Be Myself. Things really start out back when I was a grade 9 student, so 14 years old. And my parents were having a rocky kind of relationship. They, I knew at that age things weren't great. They were struggling in their marriage. They were both still loving parents. There was never really any concern with how they treated my brother and I. So I have one younger brother, Ty, and then just my mom and my dad. And so, we just knew things weren't really right. My mom got really sick, and so this was right after kind of the Christmas break of my grade 9 year. She ended up with it was the Norwalk virus, which is a pretty severe virus. It wasn't until much later that I found out that she almost actually passed away in that ordeal. We were basically at school one day and found out mom was in the hospital. Found out my dad was nowhere to be found, really. And it was kind of taken by storm. My grandparents from BC drove immediately to look after us. Turns out my dad was in Mexico with somebody who wasn't my mom. And so, it was just kind of a time where a lot was happening, right? Learning that obviously had a huge impact on my mom. She was not happy with how, she found out, she was sick in the hospital, found out her husband was cheating on her and not even in the country to help out the situation. So right. My mom was in the hospital for quite a while. I don't remember exactly how long, but I think it was like a month or so. So my grandparents lived with us for that long, looking after my brother and I. My dad eventually, he wasn't gone that whole time. He was only gone for about a month, came back. And so that didn't sit well with me, obviously. I was very against what he had done. My family is Catholic, and my mom from BC, moved to Alberta to come for school. Got a teaching job in Jenner, community in southern Alberta, and that's where she met my dad. They fell in love. She became Catholic to get married in the Catholic Church. Raised us kids as Catholics. And in that grade 9 year, I was actually going through my confirmation. So one of the sacraments to kind of commit yourself to the Catholic Church. And so it's kind of a story that goes alongside this, just because it really tested a lot of me going through that process and also dealing with this home situation. And so, I really was really mad at my dad. Very, very mad at him for not only what he had done, but just what that caused on all of us. So at 14, I had to grow up. I had to become the man of the house. I was dealing with a mom who was quite sick. My brother, who was a little younger than me, obviously not needing to understand the situation as much as I was. And so was someone who that I just had to make sure was doing well. We lived in a community where my mom, being the outsider, was seen as an outsider. We kind of really struggled with how we fit into that community for those next 6 months. So from January until July 1st, which is when we actually moved away, we were really just tested every day. Every day was just in kind of how I viewed it, was a battle for survival. Some days that was literal survival in terms of our well-being. I was very scared of my mom and how she had the potential to harm herself. And so I was worried about that. Just, worried with, in case other members of the community weren't happy with how things were. We didn't really have a lot of support, we felt like. And so we kind of felt quite isolated. And there were times where I just, did a lot of just trying to oversee our family situation and make sure that we were getting up each morning. We were going to school and going to work. We were staying safe, coming home. Coming from our farming community, we don't lock the doors, but one of the first things we did was put locks on our doors. And we kind of secretly packed up our house in those 6 months to move. And we had a bunch of friends that came and moved us away, which was just good for getting us out of there. And so along that, I got confirmed, my confirmation was an interesting kind of time, just trying to battle that understanding of, the values of Catholicism versus those same values that I didn't feel were being upheld within our own family, and with how other community members were viewing us. And it really became us versus them. It was my mom's fault why this all happened, not my dad's fault. And so I really struggled with all that understanding throughout those 6 months. So there's moments that are burned into my memory and that I won't forget, and there's other parts of that 6 months that I really have no idea what happened, kind of just black spots almost, where I just don't know all the details, but I know it was a very trying time, and really did a lot for me in causing me to grow up. I feel like I grew up a lot faster than I should have had to, and really a lot of it started in those 6 months. So yeah, then we moved to Red Cliff, which is a community about 45 minutes away. And that's where my mom, my brother, and I kind of set up our second home. My dad still lived on the farm with all of his family. My mom still worked out in that community in Jenner. She was still teaching out there. But through my high school, I kind of really just wanted to push a lot of that part of my life away. I didn't talk to my dad much at all. We would meet him at Tim Hortons every couple months for half an hour to have coffee with him and chat. And that was something that's just all I could give really at that time. And that's all I could, that's all I wanted to see out of my dad. And I know it was very hard on him, but that was all I could do. And that's all I could give his way. I really resented his actions. My dad drank a fair bit, so I didn't like that. I would see just how angry he would get about certain situations. And then obviously I was very upset with with the fact that he cheated on my mom. And then, so that was kind of grade 10 and 11. And then into grade 12 is when things started to turn with my dad and myself in our relationship. We actually spent, my brother and I, a weekend out at the farm with him, which was pretty big, from going from, 30-minute coffee sessions in a public place to a weekend alone with him. And it wasn't that I was ever scared of being hurt or harmed in any way. There was never anything like that. It was just not wanting to ever spend that much time with him. So doing that weekend was important, and it kind of really just kind of kickstarted what was next for us. And so a month or so later, we had a day. September long weekend was always, growing up, a family weekend where we just kind of, changing from summer to going into school season and hockey and sports. It was our weekend just to do something fun. We'd go to Callaway Park in Calgary, or we would just do something as a family that was kind of our, kickstart off the new year, right? And so this September long was, my dad came into Red Cliff, where Ty and I were living. We went golfing at the local golf course. We had a great day golfing, kind of, like old times. And then we got home, and Dad was set to drop us off, and Mom invited him in for dinner. And my mom made a roast beef dinner, roast beef, potatoes, Yorkshire puddings, all those great things, which was one of our staple family meals growing up, right? Like that was a big Sunday meal, a nice big roast beef dinner. And so she did that. We had a roast beef dinner. My dad stayed. We watched a movie. Couldn't even tell you what movie it was, because all I remember sitting there was like, this is the weirdest day of my life. My family is together again. We're doing family things. We're just, living a day together, right? And then that was pretty cool and pretty unique. Little did I know it was a day that was meant to be, because 4 days later, my dad was in a car accident. So my mom, or I was at home. It was a Thursday night. I was downstairs in my room doing some homework, and I heard like a blood curdling scream from my mom upstairs. And one of those screams where that like something bad just happened, right? I've heard her scream when like the flames got scored on, but I knew this was way worse than that. And so it wasn't a sports change, but something bad. So I just heard her kept saying my dad's name, Kim, because my uncle had called her and told her that my dad was in a severe car accident and he was airlifted via stars to Foothills Hospital in Calgary. So we drove to see my dad's parents and aunt, and a bunch of us got in a vehicle and we drove all the way up to Calgary. Sat in the waiting room for what seemed like hours for us to see my dad. And so they finally let us in. And as soon as I looked at him, I knew that that things weren't good. My dad was in a coma. He had no broken bones. He had no like minor internal bleeding, minor kind of bumps and bruises, but he was thrown from his truck and he hit landed on his head. And so he had a significant amount of damage to his brain. And so, I took one look at him and I knew that my dad was never waking up. And for 2 months, my dad remained in a coma, and we spent that time with him. For me, it was a chance to just say goodbye, and just kind of, for me, a lot of it was just to say that I was sorry.
That night with you all together must have been pretty meaningful then when you look back on it.
Yeah. And we'll get to that a little bit more here in a second. But that was a very impactful day for me to have that. We actually kind of called it our last supper as a family, in multiple meanings. And so, it was hard for me to see that, and also see the family who was convinced that my dad was going to wake up. As much as I hoped for that too, I knew it wasn't a reality. And if he did ever wake up, like he was never going to be my dad in the same way that I knew him, right? He, if anything, he would have been in a different state, right? For sure. So for 2 months, we traveled back and forth for the first month to Calgary. He was in at Foothills Hospital. So we, every weekend we drove up to Calgary, stayed for the weekend. We'd come back, we'd do Monday, Tuesday at school. Tuesday night, we'd drive back to Calgary, skip out on Wednesday school, drive home Wednesday night, do Thursday, Friday school. And that was just our life for those couple months. And then eventually my dad got brought back to Medicine Hat, which was really great because then we could easily just see him on a daily basis or every other day, right? We didn't have to go and live in a hotel as much as we were. And then, so this was all like the accident was early September 13th. And then in early November, we got a call that my dad was getting transported back to Calgary from Medicine Hat. So we drove up there. And on the evening of November 6th, the doctor got us all together. We thought we were making different plans of, where to put dad, all that kind of stuff. And he basically just told us that dad was never going to wake up. And that, after those 2 months, like there was no change in his brain activity. And, he was going to live out the rest of his life in the coma. Wasn't a forced or induced coma. It was just, that's how dad was. So we went back to the hotel. We started making kind of plans of what to do, transported back to Medicine Hat just so that we could be he could be close. We go back to the hospital the next day, and the doctor calls us back into the room, and then told us that my dad wouldn't survive the day. And so we called all the family and had everybody come visit. But I was fortunate to be with Dad for his last breath. And so, yeah, I just kind of the few minutes before, I just said goodbye again, and how sorry I was for the way that I had kind of disowned him there for a couple years, and that I was, just sorry that was kind of the path that our lives went. And then, sorry, after he passed, life was kind of seemingly normal in many instances, because my dad wasn't a huge part of my life, right? So we went about our regular routines, going to school, doing our sports, and it didn't ever really hit me, I think, right away that Dad was gone. And it wasn't until my birthday when I didn't get a phone call first thing in the morning from him. Christmas, those types of things where it really hit home that my dad was gone. My grade 12 graduation, going off to university, all those types of things. Those were really the moments that I really noticed it. And not to say you don't think about it or notice it other times, but those were just where it really sunk in and really hit home and really caused me to be a lot more emotional about it.
Sure.
And then, so I went to university. I was very driven to succeed in school. I kind of waffled after Dad passed whether I should just take over the farm or whether or not I should pursue ahead with going to university, which was something that I always just viewed myself doing. Family was very supportive and really helped push me to do that, to not give up on that dream, and that if the farm was something I wanted to do eventually, it was still going to be there, and we could figure it out then, right? And so that was pretty beneficial. I think all those moments of me having to kind of grow up, all those adjustments when Mom was sick and Dad had just got back from Mexico, all those skills really helped me really push forward with that kind of determined and dedicated attitude towards those next steps in life. And I am always going to be very thankful for that. I will, as much as I didn't like the situation that led to me being that driven and dedicated, I will forever be grateful that that's a part of who I am, because that taught me a lot and really gave me the confidence to just tackle whatever I wanted to, right? And so I had a very strong sense of the direction that I wanted in my life, but I had a very clouded awareness of who I was and what I wanted myself as a person to be and how to conduct myself. And I really was thinking I was somebody that I wasn't. And so that was kind of the first kind of moments where I started to see, I guess, some flags, but I still managed to ignore them pretty well and hide them and stuff them back down and move along. And so that first summer after university, I got a job at the golf course in Redcliffe where I grew up, or not where I grew up, but where we moved to. And it was kind of towards the end of the summer, and just had nothing to do one afternoon, and asked the boss what he wanted me to do. And he's like, go weed whip that fence. I was like, oh, fine. I hate weed whipping. It's the least favorite job on the golf course. But yeah, I was whipping this fence that hadn't been weed whipped in who knows how long, because it was quite full of pretty tall grass just laying against it. So I'm weed whipping away. And keep in mind, this is this would have been a year and a half, almost 2 years after that day we went golfing. And so we'd open away, look down and see a golf ball. Golf course, you're going to find a lot of golf balls. So what I do is look, see if they're any good. If they are good, they go in my pocket. And if they're junk, they go in the bin at the shop, and we hit them into the coolie after work. So look down this golf ball. It's a Ram golf ball. Cheap, crappy golf ball. But my dad always played Ram. Turned it over. Sure enough, KH initials on the golf ball. So my dad wrote his initials on everything, either his initials or his brand. K9 or KH was written on everything. So I 100% know that golf ball was hit by my dad on that day that we spent together. And so the fact that I have a memento from kind of that perfect day together is something that I'll always cherish. It's I should have brought it down for this, but it sits beside my bed. Yeah, it's on a little shot glass from my dad, right beside my bed. Just sits there, just as I see it every day when I wake up, see it every day when I go to bed. Just a nice little reminder. But
that's pretty incredible.
When you talk about, why that day happened in the first place, that's pretty surreal to me, right? The fact that that golf ball sat there for 2 years.
Yeah.
Nobody told some other kid to go wee with that fence. Nobody found that ball. Looking for another ball along that fence. That's pretty cool. And so something that I'll cherish forever. And I am very, very grateful for that day with my dad. Along with the couple months that he was in the coma, really for me to say goodbye. I really don't know what would have happened if I didn't get those opportunities. Those were really big for me. And just being able to, because I did feel very shitty with how I treated my dad. People have told me like, oh, it was justified, like, sure. But at the end of the day, my dad passed away, and, I would give a lot to go back in time to change that. I would give a lot to have conversations with him now at this point in my life. And so the fact that I robbed us of a couple of years of father and son relationship is always still hard, I would say, at times. Not as much maybe as it was back then, but I still go through moments where, it sucks. And next year I get to get married and my dad's not going to be there, right? So
has that impacted how you see other conversations with people now too?
Totally.
Like disagreements or things like that?
Yeah. So, and that's kind of where this story transitions, is really from, saying that I was very confident in myself and my direction and my drive. Like, that was all good, but I didn't give much attention to who I was. And when I say that, I'm really talking about how I dealt with things and how I dealt with people. And I just really, I think, missed out on a lot of that kind of self-awareness, and just didn't really give a lot of attention to who I wanted to be as a person, I guess. Right. If that makes sense, right? Like, I was more materialistic than I was relational, or just the character that I wanted to have for myself. So I really got to a point where I started to notice that I wasn't dealing with just life in general well. And a lot of it had to do with relationships, whether it was just how things went at work, or friendships. There, was a few times where I can now look back and see where I did push people out of my life, just because I felt it was just easier to do that than deal with me. And I, just definitely really remembering a few of those moments. And it actually wasn't until I did told this story for the first time that really hit me as, oh wow, like, those were moments where I did see signs, but I just walked right through them, walked right by them, and went on living my life. Right.
Right.
And so, yeah, in 2016 is when things really started to unfold. And that's when I'd get really angry. I was in a relationship that wasn't, I was bringing up a lot of issues just with me. And it was things that I was noticing that were no longer like, oh, the first time I was in a relationship, or it wasn't, somebody else's fault. It was really on me, and it was something that I needed to deal with. And so that was obviously a little concerning, not something you really want to realize, but so there was a night in January of 2017 where it finally all broke, and I was home alone. I have no idea why any of this happened, but I grabbed a bottle of scotch from the cupboard and a glass, and I sat down and I drank it. And I don't know what I was trying to wash away or hide or what, but I just drank, and I got very angry. My basement in this duplex was unfinished. There's some drywall, but not like fully painted walls or taped walls. But I walked downstairs and punched a bunch of holes in the wall. The smart thing, apparently, when you're drunk is that you know where the studs are, so you don't manage to accidentally break your hand. But the small silver lining of that night, I guess, was the fact that I was aware enough to not do that. But I made a mess in my basement, and went to bed at, I don't know, whatever time. Just pain washed over me, and I started crying. I had no idea what was wrong. I had no idea why I was acting like that. And it was very scary. But I called my brother, and I said a few words to him that caused him to cry. And I couldn't tell you the last time I'd ever heard my brother cry. But I had told him that I didn't want to live anymore. And that was something that I meant. And we talked for a bit, and I couldn't even tell you what we said. I just remember that part. But what I do know is that I woke up the next morning. I think I had just drank enough that I had managed to pass out, and not. Oh, nice doorbell rings in the middle of a podcast. I'm not getting up.
It was like an idea that came up. That's right.
Yeah, an idea. And so, I woke the next morning. I had said those words. I had meant them. And I knew right then that I had stuff that I had to deal with. There were things that were unresolved from my past. And I knew that it had to do with the relationship that I had with my dad, and the things that happened kind of at that point in my life. So it was kind of a weird feeling for me to like wake up realizing that too. Like I felt like, most stories you hear, people have to figure out what is wrong, but I just kind of knew what it was, and I knew what the issue was.
Right.
And I just started talking to people, and talking to my family and my close friends, and really tried to get them to help me in any way, and just try to make sense of it, talk me into things were going to be okay, all that kind of stuff. But it was just kind of weird realizing that like I was almost ready to break, and I was just waiting for it, and this was just, that night was what happened. And so I was definitely scared. I was not looking forward to what was coming next, because I knew I had a lot of work to do to figure myself out, and I knew I needed to put in effort, and that this was not something that was going to go away. It wasn't something that I could just hide for a couple weeks and then wake up and be like, okay, yeah, we're good. Right. Because if I didn't, it was going to come up again at another point in my life. And I didn't want it to be, when I was married or had kids, or, it was now the time, now or never, really, for dealing with this. So right away I started seeking professional help. So I started seeing a psychotherapist. And in the first session, he told me something that was just something that was very hard to hear, but something that made a lot of sense and something that I kind of latched onto right away. And he said, we are more likely to repeat the things that we reject in our parents. Meaning you're more likely to do all the things that you don't like about them. And so with my dad, I was upset that he drank. I was upset that he got very angry. I was upset that he cheated on my mom. And with my mom, I was upset that she, or not upset it, but like I was worried that she was going to harm herself. Right. And so in one night, I watched myself tick a lot of those boxes. I got very drunk and I got very angry, and I didn't think I was going to live very long. And so that made it very real. And not that I was ever scared that I would cheat on somebody, but I think one of my biggest fears was that I was going to get cheated on in a relationship. And so those were just very real fears that I had, but I clearly had to look at. And so we did a lot of work on really having me accept that those were not my decisions, and that my parents were my parents, and that they lived their own lives, and I could not take responsibility for their actions. And so we did a lot of work, a lot of scenarios, a lot of just really coming to terms with that I could not hold that burden, because all I would have ever done was take that and pass that down the road in terms of something that I was going to do later, or maybe that's the life I would have lived and my kids would have, started exhibiting those same behaviors too. So, it became something that we worked on really hard for those kind of first few months after that night in January. But the other thing that I did was also, I had been seeing a naturopath. And so I went back to her, obviously for new reasons. But she put me on natural antidepressants. She was very much, I bought into this journey. And she just basically gave me options and recommendations. And then it was really me who was owning it. So it was never a doctor just telling me what to do and what to take to make me feel better. It was very much, I was invested. I wasn't really wanting to do pharmaceutical drugs. I wanted natural stuff. And so that's why I did these natural antidepressants. We did, took some other things for neurotransmitter levels in your brain. And then the other thing we did was acupuncture. And I would go up on a weekly basis for acupuncture. I called them my very expensive naps, because I basically slept for an hour, because I wasn't doing a lot of sleeping at other points in my life. But as soon as she stuck a bunch of needles in me, I passed out pretty hard. But those sessions, I walked away from them just like, you could just feel the stress relaxed, and we did them quite frequently to start with, just because things kept coming back so much, and I needed them. But eventually the weekly sessions became every other week, eventually became every 3 weeks, every month. So it was really cool just to see that progression of just, how I was improving throughout those kind of 6 months, I guess, after that initial night. But then it would have been in May where things kind of took another turn, for the worse, not for the worst, but basically I'd been working hard and I was very dedicated and committed to moving my life forward. But I was just finding that I wasn't where I wanted to be. So it was a huge hit to my confidence. and it brought me back down quite a bit. So I lost a lot of progress, but it was, just quite demoralizing that, you can work so hard for so long and then feel like you've gone really nowhere. Right. And so was having, still struggling with like the people that were really close to me. Not everyone, obviously. There's a lot of people, and way too many that I could ever mention to thank, but they all know who they are. But at this time, I then chose to go public with it, and so I did a Facebook post of just how I was handling everything. That there was a second night that just led up to that where I also thought it was going to be the end, and so I made it public. That outpouring of support was pretty impactful, because I think I was in a place where I didn't think people cared about me, or didn't think that people would really even notice if I wasn't there, kind of thing. So to have that support, it was kind of a, even though it wasn't super long lasting, it was a nice little pick me up to kind of, okay, like people care about you. People that, I hadn't talked to really in years were reaching out, and it was quite positive. So that was good. But I still was going through about another month, I guess, where things weren't still that great. I was, like I said, I wasn't sleeping. I basically just tried to convince myself to watch like a movie or something to try to fall asleep, which didn't really do much than just make me get like 3-4 hours of sleep every night. Just managing to, I was in the middle of my master's program.
For what were you taking?
I did a master's of higher education administration and leadership, or a master of arts in higher education administration and leadership. So all this happened during my final project, which I don't ever want to read because I'm sure it's terrible, because I have no idea how I managed to complete it, because I can remember a lot of vivid memories about how I was dealing with this situation, but I couldn't tell you much about the rest of my life. School happened and I did a project. So I graduated, but that was not sure how. But yeah, so then there was a night in June where things got kind of dark again for the third time. And it was my buddy, who was a cop, that I called in the middle of the night, and he was working night shift. I'm very thankful that he was working on the night shift that day, because I don't really know what would happen if he didn't answer the phone. So him answering the phone is, I think, what's saved me, to be honest. And yeah, again, he just talked me that night. I don't know. I just ended up falling asleep and woke up the next day, and that was it. I needed to do something. I could not rely on whatever phone call I'd make, somebody answering on the other end. There were too many things that were being left to chance, really. And so I wanted to ensure that didn't happen again. And so I became a lot more intentional at that time about every little thing I was doing to make sure that I was moving myself forward. So school was done at that point. So I started, going to see friends, making sure that I was very, active and not just home alone, visited family. My grandpa was actually in the hospital. So my dad's dad, in Foothills, where my dad was after when he was in the coma. And so I toured around there, walked to the ICU doors, kind of just remembering putting myself in that position where I was 9.5 years prior, just to really try to just come to terms with everything and really push this, push myself forward and make sure that we weren't going to relive any of these scenarios again. Played ball, did a lot of fun things, but really was just very intentional about doing things for myself, and making sure that I was doing well. And that's when I started at the gym. I was never really somebody to do the gym. Could never convince myself to go um, to the gym on a regular basis. I couldn't do workouts with any completion. I would just give up usually and walk out the door, or sit there and stretch for an hour and call it a workout.
I feel you.
Yeah. So yeah, going to CrossFit really helped. Obviously physically, there was a lot of benefits physically, but I think much of it was just mental of, starting something, completing it, when things absolutely felt horrible, fighting through that, not convincing yourself to quit. And that really, I think, just helped, something small each day, right? You talk a lot about those little things that you can do that can build up and have a huge benefit over time. So yeah, that was big, I think, in that part of my journey. And then I went back to the farm, to where we grew up, and stayed there overnight. Just was the first time I'd stayed overnight down there since, I think, that weekend with my dad, right? And so it was just a time to be very intentional, do all the little things, and then I started to put myself out there in a more service capacity, getting involved with coaching, which did a lot for me in those, that first year. And yeah, and then it was just a matter of kind of living life and trying to take it day by day, and really focus on the things that were important to me, and just not letting those negative thoughts and those negative kind of habits creep up again. And it was just really cool to see those times when, and I was at this point still doing all my naturopath, still seeing her, still taking antidepressants, but we were weaning myself off at different times. We'd go back on them if I ever needed them. Like, it was a lot of, I felt really in the driver's seat with the journey I was on, which was, I think, important. And then, yeah, things would happen and I would shrug them off. I wouldn't blow up and get mad, break something, or, if something didn't go right at work, or, whatever the situation was. It was just really nice to see that I was starting to handle things better. And I think that just kind of snowballed into being more and more confident again, and realizing that I could do this. And I was just content. I was content with life. I was content with how things were going. I wasn't trying to force things or control things like I was before. And that was pretty cool. And then I obviously met Desiree couple years later. And it was really cool in that relationship, to not see things that triggered me in other romantic relationships. So it was just a lot of little wins that were adding up, and I was pretty, yeah, exactly. I was pretty happy with all that. The smiles were probably pretty dumb on my face at times when I'd be like, something would happen, and, just laughing to myself, like, oh, old Lucas would have, reacted way differently. And it was just pretty cool to see. So yeah, that kind of is what all happened. I mean, I've still stuck with the gym since then. I made that commitment to that, be a part of my life going forward. Obviously now I'm trying to just, be stronger, because, some areas of me are pretty weak. So, but it's all just going towards, when you're having a tough day at work or whatever, it all helps me with those aspects of life too. So, but I think the biggest thing about this situation that I'm at now is that every situation in life can be a learning moment. You can take something from every situation. Like I said, when my dad first cheated on my mom, like, I had to become a leader. I had to become confident in who I was and the decisions that I made, and the things that I could do to protect those I cared about most. And I'll never I never want to change that, right? Does it suck that that's how it happened? Absolutely. But I will not let anyone tell me that that didn't have an impact in who I became. And, you know, in this process, I added a much larger self-awareness of who I am as a person and my character and my ideals and values, and making sure that I'm living the life that I want to live moving forward for myself and others. And I think that was pretty important. And I think self-reflection is a huge component of that. There were times, like I've shared, where things came at me and I could have read the sign and listened to what things were telling me that I needed to fix things, but I chose not to, right? And so when you do self-reflect, it allows you to really take a strong look at what's going on, and, you know, if there are ways to improve yourself. And even if you think things are great, I don't think it hurts to take a look in the mirror and make sure that that things are going the way you want them to go. And then, you know, reaching out to others is very important. I think a lot of people don't, for fear of stigma or backlash or whatever the case, but you know, that's something that saved my life. I will always say that. And you have to know that you can't just get complacent, and that you can always keep moving forward and getting better. It doesn't have to be big, but any little bit helps. So I think those are big kind of takeaways for me from this situation, and things that I'm trying to apply still to this day for, you know, making sure that this process is still moving forward, but other areas of my life as well.
Well, there is so much wisdom in all this. I want to try to unpack little bits of it, but I was going to ask you the question, what would be the three biggest things, but you automatically did it. You were just on the ball. Self-awareness,
Yep.
Right? Like that knowledge that we can only control ourselves,
Yep.
Right? Those external factors, as much as they suck, like you said, in those times, there's not much you could do about those external factors, just how you viewed them and your perspective.
Totally. One of a quote that I latched onto really at this point, I think it can be applied to situations. It's about people, but it says, you can't change the people around you, but you can change the people around you. Meaning, I can't change you, Matt,
Right.
but I can change that you're not the person that's around me. So I can put myself in better situations. I can put myself around those that are helping me get better. But I can't spend my time worrying about how you act or how you are handling situations, right? Like that's not something that I can change, but I can change the situations that I put myself in to be those that are more impactful for the person that I want to be.
Yeah. The average of 5, you're the average of 5 people you spend the most time with. Right. And also, once you begin to have that self-awareness and develop an understanding of who you are too, you probably you have a better ability of being around those people than impacting them, because it's not, like you said, it's not about changing them. It's about what kind of impact are you leaving? What kind of seed are you leaving that, like you said, when you called, or I'm sure you had many conversations that someone said something that stuck with you, right? And they don't know how impactful that was.
No.
We often don't know how impactful something we say to someone else is, whether it's correcting someone in a squat and also asking them how they're doing, or saying hello to someone in the gym or on the street, or doing something kind for someone else. We don't actually know. That's what I think usually makes it so hard, is we're so caught up in wanting to see the effect right away. We don't have the patience and understanding and peace to be like, maybe I don't have to know.
No,
You also mentioned growth. So I think, well, it's 2020 right now, right? Lots going on. Lots of people are struggling. Lots of things going on externally. But you said it yourself. you wouldn't have changed a lot of those situations, even if they did really, really suck.
Mm-hmm.
You develop from them, and you could use them as development or growth, or you could be in a constant state of being the victim, right?
Totally. Yeah, no, yeah, I, yeah, you can't change what happens, and you have to roll with it. You have to make the best out of it. And I feel like I've tried to apply much of that to what we're going through right now. Is it ideal? Absolutely not. Do we all wish this would end tomorrow? Probably. But I mean, in one of my, I think, areas of me getting out of um, kind of that funk I was in was really just to do things and to serve the community. And so I was coaching and doing a lot with just with Cameras Minor Hockey in general. I was officiating, assigning, you know, board for the Northerly Snowman Arts Festival, work and going to the gym and doing all that. Like I was kind of running pretty thin, I think. And this really, the pandemic and the shutdown back in March really just had me reset and reevaluate what things were important to
Yep.
me a little bit more. And not that I don't love any of those things that I've been doing. I love all of them, and I want to, stay doing many of them, but I just don't think I want to be doing all of them, and especially all at the same time, because it was making me have less time for like Des and I, and just to really focus on those important things as well. And not that those areas that I serve are not important. It's just I need to make sure that I'm still doing what's right for for us. So
Yep.
yeah, we learn from all situations, and we can um, use them as opportunities to pivot, to adjust, to take a break. I mean, even if this year is just a break for a year from lots of things I'm doing, like I'm pretty okay with that.
Yeah.
It's like an opportunity to take a year off. You don't get that too often.
Yeah. We sometimes need something, like, not saying we need this, but in order to have some clarity, right? Like, a lot of clarity comes through the hardships if we have the ability to look at it that way.
Totally, and I don't say that meaning that I know there's a lot of people struggling in many different ways, financially, emotionally, and I don't want to take that away from them. I'm fortunate in my stability with my job and capacity to adjust my lifestyle a bit. I don't want that to come across any differently.
No, I don't think it did. But you also mentioned the growth from this, but the third one you were talking about that you would recommend to people is ask for help. This by no means means, does that make sense? That you have to tough it out.
Yeah.
And especially for guys, like, we feel like we have to be super, super tough and can't talk about this stuff. But this is, like, there's a lot of stuff going on that can't not be affecting people, right? You have to ask for the help. You have to have the courage
Mm-hmm.
to ask. Like, that's a lot of courage.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, for sure. I mean, it's not easy. I think inherently a lot of us want to remain proud and remain um, with a brave face, and especially guys, we're told ever since we were born to tough it out and to not cry, not show weakness, and those types of things. And I think we need to break that down. It's not um, we can't, nobody can do all this on their own. Everybody needs support in different ways,
Yep.
and reaching out to people is huge. And um, whether that's just asking somebody to go for coffee, or calling them up at 2 a.m, like, you have to take those risks. My phone stays on every night for a reason, and if somebody needs to call, because I will always answer the phone. Like, I know what it did for me, that the least I can do is keep that on. Um, at all times for other people that want that. And so, yeah, never be scared of asking for help, whether it's, to get a few things done, or whether it's you need to share something big. Whatever the case is, just ask. And anybody who is on the other end, where they're the one being asked, just listen. That's all
Yeah.
you need to do. You don't need to be a trained psychologist to fix a situation. If somebody's reaching out, they trust you enough to talk to you, and just talk to them. It doesn't have to be about the situation. Like when I talked to my buddy, we're talking about something completely different. And so just being open to listen is huge for everyone as well.
Yeah. It goes back to serving. Like you said, you coach now and you have your phone on for others. We're made to contribute, right? And there's that aspect of you feel that purpose when you can help someone else too. And that's why almost all the names of the companies I work with have purpose in them. I think there's something to that word. I think there's something about this, even the story, right? Like you can use your story, even if it was really, really hard, to help someone. There's a purpose behind the story. There's meaning behind the story if you let it. There is something bigger there, right? Like you touched on a lot of different aspects, like faith, connection, mindset, fitness, which is 4 of the 6 aspects of the health and fitness flywheel we use at the gym. You have to be putting time and energy into all these different things in order to be this holistically fit and healthy person.
Mm-hmm.
What does the word purpose mean to you? Because it's a hard word to describe or define.
Yeah, it's like getting called out in class again.
Sleeping. I can tell everyone that they can't see Lucas, he's not sleeping, so I wasn't calling him out.
Yeah. No, absolutely purpose. To me, it's really understanding who you are and how you want to better those around you. And I mean, you can apply it in so many instances, but you can do a lot of things, but if you don't know, why you're doing it, or if you don't have, it doesn't mean something to you, does it have purpose? No. So like, to me, it's understanding your why. Every business that is a business of any ability, they know their why, right? And I think, that applies to individuals as well. Understanding, why do you do what you do? Why do I coach? I don't have to coach. I don't have a kid that plays hockey, but I choose to do it for a variety of reasons. And that just all fits into my purpose of, it does a lot for me. And I don't mean that in a selfish way of, I just want the recognition or anything like that, but it fulfills a lot for me in terms of how I, just what I get out of it, all the like those skills that I can use for other aspects of my life, but also the learning from others, learning from different situations, and how I can then, hopefully have some positive impact on those around me, right? I coach female hockey because I think female hockey is one that gets overlooked quite often. Everybody puts a lot of attention towards boys hockey, and I think it's important that female hockey gets the attention. Obviously, I had friends that kind of connected me in that direction, which is kind of how I got started. But I think it's important to that those athletes have people who see them as more than just, it's just not a parent, right? It's somebody who's, all the boys teams have coaches that come from other areas. And, it's important for me when I coach that we have females on our coaching staff, because I don't want them to see that they can't have those type of roles in the future. And so making sure that everything you do has a reason, you understand the why, you understand the value behind it. I think that's kind of a long way of answering your question about purpose using an example of coaching.
Oh, I think it's fantastic. And it sounds like you're making quite the impact. And again, as much as it was very difficult, I don't know if it sounds like you could have made as big an impact without those difficult times you went through.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, just even understanding like the community that I grew up in, farming community, a lot of people live their whole lives there. Me going away from that changed a lot of my perspective, and then all those situations that happened obviously did as well. So I think it's, yeah, we can get stuck, we can get complacent. So I think it's important that use all experiences, big or small, to better you as an individual, right? And so I think, there's lots of things that I've learned just from moving away from that community, right? That's no fault to that community. That's just the way it is, right? Like that's when you're in a smaller community and you don't travel a lot because you're dedicated farmers and you need to look after your farm 24/7, 365, right? Like you don't have those opportunities. I've been fortunate to have opportunities to leave and change my perspective on things. And then when situations like that happen, take those learning moments from them and apply them to how I want to live my life.
Love it. This has been awesome. I don't want to keep asking questions, but I appreciate your time too. Because we've talked quite a few times about complacency, purpose, like how you're investing your time. We're made to move. We're not made to sit and just stand by. Like we're here to make a difference, right? But I'm going to ask you some closing questions here, because again, I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Go for it.
Name one thing on your bucket list.
Name one thing on my bucket list.
Yep.
Ooh.
Grow a sick beard. Done.
Done. Well, 2020 started off with a bucket list. I'm just doing this to share a shameless plug, and that was the last day. 2020 was fun, I think. But it was January 1st. Went to the outdoor classic, or the winter classic in Texas. That was pretty cool. A lot of my bucket list moments have revolved around sports in the past. Going to watch an NFL game, do the hockey thing. That's been a lot of my bucket list. But honestly, I think my bucket list is, and maybe it sounds cheesy, but I just want to be living happily on an acreage where I'm just a happy, grumpy old man, basically. Yeah, no, I think that's always been my, not always, but like since a lot of things happen in my life, and really kind of refiguring out what I want. I don't want to be back down on my farm, my original farm, but I do love many aspects of that lifestyle. And I do want to kind of mimic that in some way again. I don't think I want to run a full farm due to those limitations of not being able to do a whole lot when you have to look after cattle all the time, but have an acreage. And I think probably the biggest materialistic bucket list thing would be like, I want to build the house that I
Nice.
am a grumpy old man in.
That's awesome. That'd be pretty cool to know you did that.
Yeah. And if not, just like renovate a lot of a house then, if that's the...
Once it's finished, even just start renovating stuff right away.
Yeah.
The goal is to help people, right? So if you could give one piece of wisdom that you think will impact someone in a positive way today, what would that be?
start small. Like there's all these great ideas, all these things that I want to do in my life that I'm sure everyone wants to do. Any change you want to make, whether it's for the better or just because or whatever, just start small. Take those initial steps, figure out those pieces of why you're doing it, how you want to go about it, and just start taking action. I think is the biggest thing. I think that's the thing that in doing this, when I had that night in January, was realize that I needed to do something, but I just needed to start. And there were ups and downs and bumps along the way, but it wouldn't have happened if I didn't just start. And I think a lot of people don't do things that they want to do because they don't start, because they think it's unattainable to just get to that end point. My buddy always says, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. I can't believe I said that in this, so he's gonna love it. I'm gonna hate it forever. But
to your buddy,
yeah, he's one that helped me out a lot through all this too, so he deserves a shout out, I guess. But yeah, start small. It goes a long way in the end. And then I do want to reiterate of, like, when people reach out, listen. Like, I can't stress that enough in any aspect of life.
And actually listen. Don't just actually listen and care.
Yeah.
We get caught up in worrying about the how, when we just need to worry about starting.
Mm-hmm.
Then the who, right? The who will come. That's really good. Last question. What is the most positively impactful thing someone has said or done for you?
To some extent, I think it would be what that psychotherapist said, of just the fact that like, where I have to let those things go about my parents, and quit trying to, I don't know if I was hiding them out of shame or if I was scared to let people know about them or whatever, but I'm just letting go of the things that were not my fault and stop, wearing them as if they were my fault. I think that was probably the biggest thing for this journey that I went on, because it allowed me to give me confidence early. I think might have just been a timing thing more than anything, but it's also, I think, something that is just good advice. It doesn't have to be that profound. Like, you just might say the right thing to the right person at the right time.
Right.
That can go a way longer way than anything, right?
Yeah, this podcast, your story, this message might hit someone at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we do it. Share your story. Do the small things consistently. Don't worry about how it's going to happen. Just start.
Yep.
Have self-awareness, ask for help, and contribute and help others. There. I'll figure it out.
Cool. Simple formula.
Simple's not easy, right?
No.
Where?
But what fun would life be if it was simple?
Yes. Then we'd be lacking purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Tied it all together. We're good to go. Lucas, where can we find you? Where can people reach out to you?
Yes, I mean, on the socials.
The socials.
LM Hudec, Lucas Martin Hudec. So just LM Hudec. Okay. It's the same handle for all of them. Not on that TikTok, but Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Twitter, you'll just hear a lot of sports ranting, so you might want to steer clear of that if that's not what you want to find out about. But or I don't know, we can put my email somewhere. People can always reach out that way. I mean, Facebook, everybody just uses that nowadays, right? You'll find me.
That's why I sent the Zoom link for this episode anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put them in the show notes as well. Lucas, I really, really appreciate it.
I appreciate it. I thank you for this. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. I haven't told that story in a while, but glad to do it again.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage and vulnerability, and I really appreciate it. I'm sure a lot of others will too. It gives them the confidence to share their story to help others too.
Absolutely.
See you in the gym.
I'll be there.